Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Bob Brown. How are things at Yamaha?
Fantastic.
Oh, good. So we are excited to kick off our Back to Business series. I have to remind everybody that these are being taped, and we do send the links out. A lot of people love to aren't able to join us, but they love to listen to these, and we post them on social media. If you don't know me, I'm Candace Boothby. I'm the president of the Newnan-Coweta Chamber. We're delighted to have Cargill with us today to kick off this series, and we thought it was relevant to start with safety. And when Brad and I were talking a few weeks ago, he was sharing some really cool things Cargill has been doing to ensure a safe work environment for both their employees and their customers. And they've done some really cool stuff. I have this interesting little spiral bound booklet that they have that I guess they give it to all their employees and their customers. But this is going to be a very interactive session today. We're going to make it very casual and informal. Bradley's going to go through a presentation with Evan's help after they introduce themselves, and then we will offer the chat feature, but we're also going to offer the opportunity if you just want to speak and ask a question, you can do that as well. I don't think I've left any pertinent information out. These are 30-minute calls, so we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes, probably at 15 on the presentation, and then we'll do the same amount for the Q&A before we wrap it up at 3:30. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Brad Down, who has been in our community, probably 21 years, Brad. I can't remember exactly. And he has been with the company his whole career. Most recently, he has been opening up plants in Mexico, and he does a lot of interesting things in our community. We're very blessed. And then, of course, Evan Horton, listen to me. Renee, I see you, right? Evan Perry, doing the things he's doing as plant manager. So, Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you and Evan.
Good. Thank you. Couple of things, guys. Number one, the great news is Cargill has an amazing firewall that does not allow anything bad to get in or out. That's the good news. The bad news is Evan couldn't get in through the system, and we couldn't share our presentation into this Zoom call. It just, there's something about the Zoom call it didn't like. So we'll just talk it through. I will tell you this, though. If there is any more details after Evan and I go through this that you'd like, please give Evan a call. Cargill Worldwide has been sharing what they've been doing with this virus and going from there. Let me give you the premise of how we started down the path. We started to learn about what was going on in our China operations. We have a number of kind of gate-to-plate China operations that were greatly affected in the very specific areas where COVID started. That was the tough news. The good news is they learned quickly of what to do and what not to do. And that really helped plants like Newnan, Georgia and Cargill around the world kind of get a quick jump on what to do. And so what Evan will walk through today is kind of what we're doing in Newnan, and what you're going to get is a description of two different things. One is what we might have learned in a plant in China, a poultry plant in Thailand, a peanut plant, somewhere else in the world, or another meat plant somewhere in North America. And the other thing is Newnan is blessed with some amazing people, and a lot of what we would call our best demonstrated practices have actually been developed and tried in Newnan and then transferred out to the balance of the world. And so Candace mentioned Mexico. It's kind of a delay in Mexico, but we're starting to see more activity down there now with COVID. So this thing is moving around the world and far from over. So Evan, why don't we talk about first, when employees are coming into work and their vehicles, et cetera, why don't you talk about what we're doing on the transportation side?
Sure, of course. So upon entering the parking lot, Brad, any carpool vehicle, meaning that there's 4 or more people, we have a crew that goes out and will actually sanitize the vehicle, to include, using Lysol spray on the seats, using Clorox wipes on the door handles, steering wheels, seat belts. We're just making sure that when people exit the vehicle, it's cleaned and sanitized for when they re-enter.
Good. So we've got that. Let's talk about at shift change. And Evan, how many people in Newnan, working in Newnan today?
About 600, Brad, currently.
Okay, so at shift change, we've got 300 leaving, 300 coming in. Talk to me about how do you get into the building now in Newnan, Georgia, with 300
Sure.
people?
I mean, that is critical. Although COVID is kind of like you said, Brad, it's a multifaceted prevention approach. I mean, you have to start with entering the building. So after, the parking lot, get out of the vehicle, the employee will go through a process which will include a checking of their ID. So we'll have someone check their work ID and immediately issue the employee a face covering, a mask. Then they'll go into a screening area which has 6-foot designated lines painted on the floor, on the concrete. They'll line up, they'll go through and they'll get their temperature checked. So we have an IR gun that we do 100% employee temperature checks. Then they'll go through from the temperature check as long as it's 100 degrees or less. Although the CDC says 100.4, we've taken an approach of 100. So 100 or less, they're allowed to enter the building. If they're over 100, they'll go to an isolation chamber, which is also in the parking lot, a separate room that has a staff nurse in it. But let's assume that the temperature is under 100. The employee will then line up in a specific line that's kind of set up by their language. So we have 3 primary languages in Newnan, which are English, Spanish, and Burmese. So the employee will go to this line. They'll go through and they'll be asked a series of questions. Do you have any symptoms? Have you traveled abroad? Et cetera, et cetera. From there, they'll be directed to go to an area where they will sanitize their hands, and they'll be given PPE for the day, which will include a sanitized hairnet, another mask, gloves, earplugs, et cetera.
Evan, talk to me about the color system you've created to create less lines. So the color-coded systems on times to go through.
Sure. So another thing, Brad, is because of the amount of people during shift change, we've actually put a half-hour gap between the 2 shifts to allow for more distancing. But, people have different job tasks in any kind of production facility. So some people need to come in, an hour before the shift starts, Brad, or some maybe half an hour, or some are 15 minutes. So to designate the people that are needed at those specific times, we've put a colored identification sticker on the employee's hard hat. A gold sticker may mean you're authorized to enter the screening process 30 minutes before the shift starts, and a yellow one may mean 15 minutes, et cetera. So just to kind of alleviate some of the traffic and the congestion, Brad.
Okay. The other thing is, guys, one thing to note, the question about loss of taste or loss of smell, historically around the world, what we have found is that sometimes goes before the temperature spikes. So someone might have a 99-degree temperature, but they've lost their taste. And so that was an early indicator that we were using far before the CDC recommended it, because we had learned at our other facilities that tends to go hand in hand with COVID, even if their temperature is okay. And so they get into the plant, Evan, the isolation room. Do you want to talk a little about what the isolation room and the nurse in that, what that process is, just briefly?
Sure. We have a trailer that we've brought on site. It is isolation room, I guess is the best way to describe it, where a nurse is suited up in full PPE to include, an N95 respirator, a gown, frock, face shield, etc. The employee in question will go to that room, and a nurse will come in and check the employee's temperature again using a probe thermometer. Go over the symptoms, if there are any, and make a recommendation from there. And the reason that we have it outside of the building, Brad, is because if the employee was to go in, down the hallway to our normal health services center, they could have passed another 15, 20, 50 people, who knows, and just, created an infection spread. So it was very important for us to do that on the property, but outside of our four walls, so to speak.
Yep. So they get into the building. Let's talk about what our cafeteria looks like now. And
Right.
What have you done in the cafeteria to create more than just social distance?
So, another area where necessary modifications have just been, made and really mandated to allow not only spacing and but also cleanliness and sanitization of the table. So we've created these red-green laminated cards. When an employee goes into the cafeteria, they're looking for a green card to be side up on the table, and that lets the employee know that this table is green, it's good to go, you may sit down, it's been sanitized. When the employee finishes their lunch, breakfast, whatever, they'll flip that green card to red, and that lets everybody know, hey, don't sit here, I haven't been sanitized. So we've also added the position of one person, Brad, on all shifts that works in the cafeteria, and their primary focus is to keep those tables sanitized and to make sure that the cards are on the table and being used properly. We've also added plexiglass on three sides of the table to act as a barrier. In addition to that, Brad, we've taken it a step further and added a red-green card to the microwave. We use shared microwaves here, so kind of the same principle. An employee reheats a meal, flips the green card to red, somebody will go over and sanitize the microwave, and then flip the card back to green, letting others know, hey, it's safe to use. Passing out gloves, Brad. If you go through our cafeteria hot food line, we're having all employees wear gloves. We've gone to a cashless system as well, so it's card or charge only. And we're really trying to stagger the breaks, Brad, to just accommodate the limited seating and avoid, a large gathering.
So we've got the cafeteria. We've closed the locker rooms, correctly? They're no longer accessible by any employees, correct?
Correct. And that was just an area that we felt, it's really hard to enforce the social distancing in a locker room. You're sitting down in some cases and waiting for your shift to start, and you're just, lockers butt up to each other. So that was just a real challenge from us early on, and we felt like closing it was the right solution.
Now, in the plant, you've got barriers, and these aren't just temporary barriers, right? You've engineered barriers on almost every position in the building, isn't it?
Correct. Yep, we've gone with the plexiglass theme that seems to be the one that really, really works in industry, because plexiglass can be, mounted pretty easily. It's lightweight, it's see-through, and it acts as just an absolutely fantastic barrier. So, yeah, we've permanently engineered dividers.
And so, guys, as much as we've done in the plant, building barriers and what Evan has described, our leadership, literally last week, we went through this process with them. They said, that's great, it's not enough, come back, do more. So we're being challenged every day to do more and more and more. Let's talk about the Decon 7 that we're using. And what is Decon 7, Evan?
So Decon 7 is a disinfectant that was developed by the military to combat anthrax and Riken. And we figured, you know, if it's good enough to combat those nasty things, then we're going to certainly have you know, have good luck with it combating COVID-19. And it was found that it will kill COVID-19. We have a very extensive R&D center in Wichita that has done a tremendous amount of study on this. So we're fogging every single day. All common areas are fogged every day with Decon 7. Areas on the floor are cleaned daily with Decon 7. You know, our maintenance shop, shipping office, distribution, locker room, front office. So it's just, it's a very amazing chemical. And you know,
Yeah.
Brad, we fog the front offices here, you know, and there's no residue. We fog computers, telephones.
Yeah, this stuff, I got to tell you, folks, we've been using Decon 7 as a company for a while inside the plant. And I've been part of some acquisitions we've done, and we have gone in and used Decon 7. And this thing doesn't just reduce, this is log reductions from a microbiological standpoint. This stuff is what I would tell you in my 30 years, the single most effective cleaner we've ever used. Now, with COVID, we've expanded it into the areas. What Evan has described might feel temporary. We don't see an end point to a lot of the things that we're doing for a couple reasons. Number one, until this thing is not just gone, but there's vaccines and it makes it go away, we're not going to stop what we're doing. Two, there's some really good practices in this, and flu season's always brought, you know, the attendance in that. And so there's a lot of what we're doing that I don't know that we'll ever stop doing that. And so we'll use more technology on the in process and the out process of our employees. And for instance, temperatures. How many temps do we take a day now, Evan, of every employee?
We're doing 3 temperatures a day, Brad. We're doing upon entry to the building for their shift start. We're also doing after lunch and at the end of the day, because we absolutely do not want someone to go home sick and spread the virus to a family member or even, you know, on the carpool ride going home. So it's just 3 a day. You know, we found early on, Brad, like you said, using our global footprint, people will come to work and they're perfectly okay. And you know, will onset in the matter of hours. So at lunch, you know, you could have developed a fever in just that time, short time. So it's, yeah.
So here's some points on it is, while I can't give you the specific numbers to what we've had for positive or presumptive cases, I can tell you this, is when I look at this facility and compare it to others around the world in the areas in which the facilities are at, Newnan has done almost better than anyone on managing the numbers to the lowest point based on where our employees live, and not just where they live, how they live. A number of our employees have immigrated to America and they live multiple families in one home. And so it's, if one gets it, this thing moves really quickly in the community. And then when it hits the community, it hits the facility. And so talk, Evan, about how you've managed education in multiple languages to 600 or 700 people.
So, Brad, that's a great point to bring up. We have created a 3x5 card, and it's a card that really just has on one side the symptoms that are primarily associated with COVID-19, and then on the back side has some other, you know, important information on safe distancing and you know, keeping the the group sizes that you gather into 10 or less, and staying home, and all those things if you're feeling ill. And we got those translated, Brad, into 5 languages. And then what we did was we had some of our employees that are very active in their communities, you know, in Atlanta, in that area. We gave them just hundreds of these cards to take to the church, to take to the community center, just get the word out and get the awareness out.
So all in all, guys, this is probably a fraction of what the facility does every day. I can tell you it's worked extremely well in the wake of COVID. We'll keep a lot of these things going. And we're open to discuss and share anything we do with anyone in the community. And so, preguntas, questions?
So Bradley, I held up your card. I believe that's the one that Evan was discussing, right? And if anybody wants it, is it okay if we make a copy of this and send it? It's symptoms on one side and safe distancing on the other side. I know there's proprietary rights.
Well, not necessarily. On this one, we've asked, and there's a lot of things we'll give away. We've got social distancing coordinators. So people are paid in the plant to do nothing but walk around and make sure that people are social distancing. And if you don't think that's necessary, you're just absolutely wrong, because the fact is we tend to move towards other people regardless. And so these people are paid to continually remind us not to. And it's the numbers have proven out extremely well. I would say Evan and the team have, with an abundance of caution, quarantined more people faster than of the facilities I'm working on. And so while that was painful, what it did is probably helped us keep the thing out of the plant. And so
we have about 7 minutes left, and I think you had suggested maybe even rather than doing the chat feature, we'll do that, but we may open it up for people who want to actually ask a question. But I have a question. You said earlier in your comments that when you were sharing some of your practices with some of the company leaders, they said that's great, but you can do better, go back and do more. What exactly, where did they see the gaps that they thought you could do better? Because when I look at your stuff, I think it's remarkable.
It's not enough, and it's not permanent enough. So we're, Evan and the team, Evan, you're engineering a better process on incoming of the people, correct?
Yes, just a more permanent process. I mean, this is very effective, Brad, but we'd like to do something a little more automated. I mean, there's a lot of AI technology out there with facial recognition that we're starting to use at Cargill, and just, you know, making it permanent, using IDs to go through turnstile-type entrances, and just automate as much as possible.
And then we're going to space inside the process where we, just to give you an idea, we'll make, what Evan and the team will make this week will feed 4.5 million people. So there's a considerable amount of meat being made. And yet, Candace, they asked us to do better at spacing the people out and putting up barriers so that they can't get close to each other.
Okay. So one of the questions we have is this, what you've described, scalable to serve other types of businesses of all sizes, like restaurants or retail, or regardless of size?
Cargill is doing this in facilities with 20 employees, and we're doing it in facilities. What's Dodge City got right now? 3,500, Evan? So from 20 to 3,500.
Okay, so it is. Okay, one of the questions we also have has to do with the would automated temperature scanning stations simplify the monitoring process? Because right now you're doing it manually, right?
No, it's an infrared technology set up. So while there's a person there, it's doing it. It's not doing facial recognition. The temperature process itself is with infrared technology. And so there isn't somebody with a thermometer, but we haven't gone facial recognition yet. Interesting enough on that one today, they were actually doing correlation and repeatability analysis. So we're using our math and statistics to make sure that everything we use is repeatable and correlatable to another thermometer. So every thermometer that's used is checked and balanced to a more manual process to make sure that everything we say is accurate is accurate.
So you have 300 employees coming in at shift change, correct?
Yeah.
And saying you have a 30-minute window that you've built in. So how much time does it take for you to manually do the temperatures and give them their PPE and get them through the door and get them on the floor?
Evan, what do you think? About 95 seconds?
Yeah, for the whole process, Brad, it's 5 minutes or less.
Okay.
For all 300?
Yes, for each person. But remember, they're staggered. So that was the logic of using that color system. So 300 will come in at each shift, but, 75 may come 30 minutes early and then 50, 15. So they're not all at once.
I went this morning and went through the process. There was not one person, not 6 feet apart, and the line moved, and they started up on time.
Okay. So we have another question. It has to do with policy. So as you have employees that are sick, some are going to be sick longer than others. Have you had any policy changes that you've made to accommodate people who may need extra sick days because of being ill with the COVID disease?
We've been paying everyone related to COVID. Everyone.
And also, you said something to me the other day about when we have the Memorial Day weekend. Were there any repercussions for employees that chose to go out of state when they came back?
I don't think we had anyone. Did we have anyone go out of state on the weekend?
No.
No.
And if they do test positive, they go home and quarantine for 14 days with full pay, correct?
Whether they test positive or not, we've quarantined tens and tens and tens of people that never got tested, that went the 14 days and then got reviewed and came back.
Okay.
So we use what we call, and we do this in our food safety program, so we're used to this, we use what we call an abundance of caution.
Okay. Are you paying those employees when they arrive early to get screened during that?
Everyone is paid for what we call donning and doffing time. We're paying people for all of the time that we would call work. Standing in a line to get into work is work.
So the last question that I see that's been posted to the chat room has to do with the volume of cases, of COVID cases in a variety of locations from, Iowa to Texas. And the question is there anything specific about COVID that makes these cases more likely? And how many cases of hospitalization has Cargill personally had?
Don't know. We're in 65 countries with hundreds of thousands of employees, and so I don't have access to that.
How about Cargill Newnan?
Yeah, here's what I would tell you. I don't get, or Evan or Cargill isn't getting hung up on what already happened. We're on a phone call every day focused on what are we going to do better today than we did yesterday? Because while you can use the numbers to manage it, the communities and the living conditions, there's so many other things attached to this disease. If you play the numbers too much, you're going to get into a blame game, and you're not going to be the kind of proactive employee and employer you need to be. You need to build an amazing level of trust with everyone in your building that it's okay to say that you're sick and we're going to take care of you. And while you're not sick here, we're going to do everything we know how to do to take care of you. And so we don't focus on the bottom line. We manage this thing above the bottom line, and it's proving to be very, very successful that way.
So address real quickly, and this will probably have to be our last question, what is it about the meat processing industry that has created what seems to be an abundance of COVID cases in a variety of places around the country?
A, it's really good news. because some of them are really big.
Mhm.
B, a lot of the workforce, you know what, I love the workforce in this one. They're smart. They don't live two people in a large home. They live layers of families in one home. And when they come to work, they commute long distances with, I don't know, in one of those vans, they have brand new Ford vans and GM vans that they drive. What is it in there, Evan? 12 people in a van? So it's not the plants per se, it's the conditions outside. And that's why maybe we've come off a little better in our US plants with Cargill, is because we've put a lot of focus on engaging the employees when they leave the plant, because that's maybe more important than when they're at the plant. The plant's pretty clean. It's cold and clean.
You're saying it's really kind of more of a cultural issue with some of these larger plants with their employee base.
Yep, some of it is. Some of it I would take the chance to say this. Cargill's a private company that always does what's right. And they tend to do what's right way before they're ever told. Some of our competitors chose to wait to be told to do it, and by the time they did that, it had already taken hold. And once this thing grabs you, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and it just keeps giving and giving and giving. And so if you don't jump on it quickly, it will go get you. And so Cargill, maybe because of our plants in China, maybe because of who they are, they've just continually. And Evan, how many times has someone said to you, you're spending too much to manage COVID in the last 3 months? Zero. I've never been asked that question ever by anyone in a leadership role in Cargill. So they're not answering the call to say, how much meat did you make and how much money did you spend? They're saying, tell me about how you're doing and is everyone safe? Every call at every level.
Well, you guys always set the standard and the bar quite high, and we always enjoy learning from you. And we certainly appreciate your willingness to share with us. And if it's okay with you, is for us to send out your presentation to the membership.
If we can, we just can't get it out of we can't get it past the Cargill firewall.
Yeah.
I would also welcome this. Call Evan Perry. Evan and the team in Newnan, I'm absolutely privileged to just work with them. When I went in this morning and I watched what they're doing from where we started, every week they reinvent themselves on how to better manage this. By the way, through all of this, how many people have you hired in the last 6 weeks, Evan?
Oh, probably 100, Brad, 100 employees or so.
So while we've been doing this, we've added, what, 30% more volume in production?
Yes.
And 100 more people. So we're not doing this and laying back. We're actually doing this and we're hiring more and making more. So the team has done a remarkable job in growing the business while they've been going through this. So it's been really good. It's been fun to watch.
Well, we appreciate you, both you and Evan. Evan, you do a great job. Brad, you do a great job as well. We're blessed to have both of you, as well as Cargill in the community. We need to go ahead and conclude our call. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Susan will be sending out the recording of today's call, so you'll have access to it. If you have more questions, both Evan and Bradley are available, and we will send you some follow-up information. And just thank you for being a part of this. And I guess the most important thing is stay safe, right?
Yes. I'm going to go hang out with goats because it has not been proven at this time that goats can get COVID. So,
well, there you go. Well, I know you have a lot of goats, so you go be with those goats. And you guys have a wonderful day. I know several of us have a board meeting coming up in 10 minutes. So take care, and thank you again. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.